Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful that you're here with me. And the reason I'm emphasizing grateful is because this whole podcast is about daily practices to help transform your life. And today's episode, I walked away after this interview feeling so energized, inspired. I was talking to my kids about the podcast. I was rethinking my daily practices and how to even amplify them and integrate them more deeply into my life. The energy exchange that we have with people is so powerful. And this podcast episode was a reminder of that. When someone has good energy, loving, kind, caring, genuine, authentic energy, it's contagious. Like it transfers to other people. That's why when we're in a kind of a tailspin sometimes, or maybe we are ruminating on something, that transfers to other people too. And we have to have grace for ourselves and compassion when we are into that space. So I'm really excited to share this week's episode. I think it might be one you might want to listen to it multiple times so you're really integrating in the material. Although they're simple concepts, they're reminders to not just listen to a podcast, but take something away and make a change. Do something with it. Take it and do a daily practice that you're going to commit to for a certain period of time and see how you feel. We talk about this on this week's podcast. So let me introduce you to my guest. Marc Fussell is a visionary founder behind the nonprofit. It is a nonprofit. So you'll hear him talking about take 2 minutes. And this is so powerful, taking 2 minutes to do something for yourself to feel better. It's nonprofit. So he's not into this to make money. He wants to break even, obviously, but it's something that you'll hear the story behind it and how he started it. And it just made my heart smile. It's a revolutionary platform designed to enhance mental wellness through positive psychology and technology. With over 25 years of experience in IT, Marc's entrepreneurial spirit and passion for improving mental health have led to creating a suite of tools that leverage daily positive messages, gratitude journaling, meditation, breathing exercises. You know, I love the breathing and gratitude, and grounding exercises. Can't get enough of those. And gratitude challenge, sleep audio. So if you're struggling with sleep, this may be for you. Dream journaling, and much more to foster happiness and wellness. As a dedicated father, his journey into positive psychology was inspired by personal commitment to support his son's mental health, evolving into a mission to spread positivity to a broader audience. I really think the journal that I have, or the guide that I have, will couple nicely with today's conversation. You can get it for free at Kristen, Kristen, dboyce.com/free resources. And get on the newsletter. There's helpful articles. I give you links to the podcasts, any kind of special upcoming programming I'm doing or speaking engagements. So if you want to get it weekly in your inbox for a dose of positivity or a wellness or helpful information, be sure to get the journal, and then you'll be on the newsletter as well. And this is why I do this podcast, is I like to be inspired. I like to be reminded. I like to learn, grow, evolve, and expand myself each and every day. I love the opportunity to stretch and grow. Sometimes I'm like, no growth, please, because I've had enough. But in general, I welcome it. I am thirsty for it. I love it. And I want to create a community of people that want the same thing, that we can have deeper conversations. And we talk about that on today's episode. So I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. I hope you get out at least 1 or 2 nuggets that you're going to take and implement into your life. So listen to the whole episode and let it speak to you in ways that maybe you hadn't anticipated. So enjoy this episode with Marc. Here it is without further ado. Enjoy. Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. If you have listened to this podcast for an extended period of time, or maybe you're new, you know I love a gratitude practice, journaling, taking time quiet to kind of recenter yourself, get regulated. You know I love deep breathing. So we are going to really be centering on how do you even start a gratitude practice? How do you begin journaling? Where do I start? And my guest today, I'm so excited to have him on, and I want him to share this story of how he even got into this work. So, Marc, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Your story is what intrigued me about how you got started. So, can you share that with the listeners, like how you even got into this place of starting an app with a journal, gratitude practice, meditation? So, share with the audience how it all started.
Yeah, I actually like the story. So back in 2015, my older son was in high school and he was struggling a bit with depression. In my mind, it was typical high school problems, but typical high school problems for one person, someone else may react differently to those. Obviously, everyone's different in how they react to things and everyone's different on their emotions. So my son was struggling a bit with high school problems. And I decided to send him a positive message every day around noon, just something to let him know he's loved mostly, let him know people out there care about him, hopefully lift his spirits. And that is something I just started doing around noon every day. Well, I am well, back then, at least, I was mostly a developer and I've been a technologist my whole life. And because of my position in corporate America, quite often around noon, I was in a meeting or heads down working on something or somehow not focused on a positive message, though I was still trying to get one out to him. And so when I realized that, all of my positivity was happening early in the morning. So in the mornings, I try to exercise, do yoga, meditate, something in the morning. And that's where I was having all these good positive thoughts that I wanted to share. And so I wrote a little application that allowed me, while sitting on my yoga mat, to text a number or text a message to a phone number, and a little app would take my message and put it into a document. And then I'd sit down at my desk later in the morning and kind of round out the message. And then the app would take a message out of that document and send it to him. So it kind of automated the process of sending him a positive message every day. They were still my messages. It was just doing it at noon instead of me having to remind myself at noon when I might have been knee deep in problems. So after I wrote that little app, a few other people in the family, maybe a couple of his friends, wanted to receive the messages. They liked them. They were kind of jiving with them. And so I added people to the distribution of the messages. And at some point in time, I had, I don't know, let's say 10 or 12 people receiving my positive messages. I thought that was cool. I didn't think much more of it than that until one day I was in a little local store that I frequent getting a fresh pressed juice. And the person behind the counter, who I knew also received the messages, was talking about the message they received that day and how impactful it was and how much they appreciated it. And a complete stranger in line behind me goes, "Oh my gosh, I get your messages also." And I don't remember what I said back. Remember, I had confusion, like, what? And so I went home and looked, and there was about 300 people getting my positive messages. Obviously, word of mouth had spread a bit and people were signing up for the messages. And I didn't even know it was even happening. And so once I realized that there was a lot of people getting these messages, it made me think that I needed to do more with this than just send out messages I had created. And so I kind of dove into my network of contacts. And through my network, I got in touch with a psychologist out of Duke University, a doctor of psychology. And he had a grant at Duke University to study resilience and happiness in students and healthcare workers. And he was willing to share a lot of data with me. We had dozen phone calls over a couple months, each being a couple hours long, where he just shared the activities he was having people partake in and the outcomes of the activities, showing data. He had about 28 to 40,000 people through his, I think at the point I talked to him was 28,000. By the time he got done, it was like 40,000 people through his program to study how these activities affected people. And he shared all the data with me. And from that, I started creating an application to do more than just send out positive messages. So at this point in time, Take 2 Minutes has still the base of positive messages. And I think the positive messages are up to 1,600 positive messages that it has to send out. But it also has all these other activities that have been created over the years. And I'll add to that, obviously it was created for my son, or to create it initially to help my son. But since that initial creation, everything pertaining to Take 2 Minutes has been done with counselors, clinicians, therapists, or psychologists involved in the activities, including the messages. The messages have all been read by someone with experience and given me feedback as to what to change about certain ones or which ones to get rid of. So, not saying that everything in Take 2 Minutes, all the messages are perfect for everyone. That's the beauty of anything, right? There's nothing that's perfect for everyone. But the goal is that there's ideally in 1,600 messages going to be many, which everyone will get some value out of.
Okay. I have so many questions. First,
Okay.
how did your son, because teenagers can be like, stop texting me, stop hitting me up with these, because I'm like, oh, I see something and I send it to my girls.
Yes.
When I have two teens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, look at that. It's a positive thing. How did he respond to daily messages? First of all, people are probably wondering, how did that
Yeah.
go? What was his response?
Well, it's interesting. Back in 2015, we weren't as active with texting everything on social media. So my text to him, that's probably the only text he was getting from me on a daily basis back then. So it wasn't like I was inundating him with positive messages. And actually, I've asked him recently because of other podcasts I was on. I said, hey, I never actually asked you, did you like those messages? And his response, this is within the last few weeks, was something like, he said, I think I really appreciated getting them. He goes, I don't know if they all really sunk in at the time, 17 maybe years old he was. I don't know if they all really sunk in. He goes, but I really did appreciate the effort and you sending them every day because it did lift my spirits a bit. So it was one of those things where I think in retro, he didn't necessarily let every message sink in fully, but he did appreciate the gesture.
Does he still get messages?
He's actually a part of Take 2 Minutes. Take 2 Minutes actually has a podcast as well now, similar to your podcast. And he does all the video editing for the podcast and he helps send out the assets to the podcast guests. So he's a part of Take 2 Minutes. He helps with Take 2 Minutes and he's a very happy child now.
Okay. So you can see the results were there. He may not have taken in every single message, but it did make an impact because
Right.
everybody's always wondering. Everybody wants to connect at a better level with their kids and with other people. And I like the idea, like you had this, because I'm very much like that. Someone's on my mind. I want to send them a text. Can you do that through the app? Like, can you send somebody something like programmed in? So let's say you want to send somebody a message. You know how you did. You're like, I want to send it every day at noon, but I'm busy. And so does the app allow you to do that or no?
I think there's two answers to that question. I'm trying to think how to best frame it. So if a user, John Doe, signs up for Take 2 Minutes, you, as Kristen, cannot just send a random person on Take 2 Minutes a message. However, if you are a clinician, a therapist, a counselor, a coach, or someone who has patients, or a parent who has children, those two demographics can sign up at Take 2 Minutes for a group account. And the group account allows you, the person who's the group owner, to create groups and invite individuals to the group. So let's dive into that a little bit more. A parent can buy a family pack, and part of the family pack, they can then invite their spouse and their children to be a part of their group. They then can send messages through Take 2 Minutes to people in their group. Similarly, I have some coaches, counselors, and therapists, all three different professions, obviously, but coaches, counselors, and therapists who use Take 2 Minutes, and they buy a small business pack, and they invite clients to Take 2 Minutes, and they can text their clients then through Take 2 Minutes as well, in addition to the standard texts that go through Take 2 Minutes. And the neat thing about both those examples are parents and coaches, counselors, and therapists not only can send a message to someone, but they can also almost like prescribe activities. So you can send a message and say, hey, client of mine, I think you should try gratitude journaling. Here's a link to get you started. And the system will send that gratitude journal link to them to get them started with gratitude journaling. So you can kind of reach out to your clients that way.
So let's talk about gratitude journaling specifically in the
Yeah.
research, because you can say it and we've heard it for years. I mean, gratitude journaling started a long time ago. People
Yes.
know that, okay, I need to be grateful, but when we're depressed, it's hard. It's hard to find for folks that are depressed, or maybe they're going through trauma of some sort, PTSD, or a traumatic event happen, a death, a loss. It's hard to find that ability to find the gratitude. So what's the research behind gratitude journaling?
That's a big question, I think. The research behind gratitude journaling, I think you know it as well as I do, and that it is very beneficial to someone to recognize gratitude. It can really help you get into a more positive mindset. It's an activity in the area of positive psychology. Positive psychology is not, and I've heard people ask this and talk about it on social media. I'm not looking for people to have fake or false positivity. Life has ebbs and flows. And Kristen, you probably know this more than I do in your position. There's hundreds of emotions, like, over 300 different known emotions probably. So my point is, you're supposed to have more emotions besides just happiness. That's part of life. The idea behind positive psychology, I'm going to circle back to gratitude journaling. The idea behind positive psychology is the idea that when you do have difficulties in life, grief, sadness, anger, whatever it may be, through positive psychology, you are able to dig yourself out of that state more quickly and have less of a chance of spiraling down into more depression and more negativity. That's, in my mind, what positive psychology is supposed to do. I practice positive psychology. I love being a happy person. I'm not happy 24/7. Life's not rainbows and butterflies, right? You're going to have problems. You're going to have deaths, unfortunately. You're going to have friction in life. And positive psychology helps me recognize when I'm in a negative mindset and more quickly lift myself out of that negative mindset. Doesn't mean you shouldn't still recognize those emotions, embrace them, and have them be a part of your life, just not let it take you down a negative spiral. So gratitude journaling helps with that, because gratitude journaling helps you recognize gratitude or positives in your life. The problem with some people in gratitude journaling, this is through my experience even, because Take 2 Minutes at this point in time is upwards of 5 years old and has had 30,000 people go through the system. And for the first 5 years, everyone in my mind was a beta tester. So I was reaching out to people asking, how's it going? What are you struggling with? And what I learned was a lot of people want to gratitude. They've heard about it. They know it could be beneficial, but they sit down with Take 2 Minutes or one of the other thousands of apps out there and they just blank. They're like, I don't know, I'm not grateful for anything. And they move on. They try, but it doesn't click for them. For those individuals, in Take 2 Minutes, I've created what's called a gratitude challenge. And the beauty of the gratitude challenge, in my mind, is it gives you prompts every day of things or something for which you should be grateful. And it asks you to write a gratitude statement for that. The idea behind this is, if you, in the gratitude challenge, I have set up where you can do it for 7 days, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, however long you want to. I think there's a top cap. I think if you ask for a gratitude challenge for 100 days, it's going to top you out at like 25 days. It'll just set it at 25 days. But ultimately, the purpose of the gratitude challenge is to get you into a habit of recognizing gratitude. And what I found, again, through research and case studies I've done in Take 2 Minutes, and this is a well-known fact, but not everyone knows, is after about 14 to 17 days, everyone who did the gratitude challenge started just recognizing gratitude around them. It became a habit. So they all of a sudden don't need the gratitude challenge anymore because they are recognizing gratitude and able to write statements on their own. But going back to the gratitude challenge, I'll give you an example. Example I almost always use in my talks, and that is one of the gratitude challenge statements is, the sun provides heat and warmth to our planet. Think of a reason why you like the sun. And so just that simple prompt gives someone one thing to focus on and one thing to write a statement about. And what I tell people is, your statements don't have to be prolific, right? Your statements can be simple statements. I like the sun because on a warm, sunny morning, I like being outside and it makes me feel good. It's a simple statement, but that still is a statement of gratitude. Or you can say, you can reverse that. You can not like the sun, right? You can still write a gratitude statement. You can say, I actually like cloudy days and it's overcast. The sun isn't as bright, but you're still liking something. You're still saying something you like, and that helps you with gratitude. And you do the gratitude challenge again for 14, 16, 17 days, and all of a sudden it becomes habitual where you're recognizing gratitude naturally.
I started this practice with my kids a long time ago at the dinner table. What are 3 things you're grateful for? And we would go around the dinner table. Like, it's something to play with. Be playful with it. These are ideas. If something comes to you, kind of start playing with the idea. And I think what's happened now is they can access gratitude more easily because it's become part of like our family system. And when it becomes part of your family system, as we know through family systems work, that it can be passed down generationally. And so these are just ideas and practices to start with. When we talk about gratitude, we're not talking about bypassing what you feel. I think some people can use it as I'm just going to kind of stuff down, suppress what I feel, and I'll bypass that and just focus on what I'm grateful for. But we're not actually processing what's underneath. So I think it's important to note that we still want to process what we're feeling underneath. This is an and in both. And that'll help us access the gratitude as well. So, are there stats that you have on gratitude practices, like percentage of people that are doing a gratitude practice and how has it impacted them in a healing way?
Yeah, so I've done a few case studies within Take 2 Minutes, and I kind of touched on those earlier. With the case studies I've done, I usually take a group of individuals who I don't know. I make sure it's no one I know, and they're new to Take 2 Minutes. I usually advertise for looking for people to work as part of a focus group. And when I get 10 to 12 people set up, there's a few steps I take to make sure I can properly record the delta, the improvement, let's call it. So the first thing everyone does is they take a modified differential emotion scale questionnaire. If you're not familiar with the MDES questionnaire, it's a questionnaire originally called the Differential Emotion Scale Questionnaire, created by Carol Izard in the 70s. And the idea was to kind of rate your negativity against your positivity. In the 1990s, Barbara Fredrickson modified it to make it the Modified Differential Emotion Scale Questionnaire. And she expanded on the emotions that are asked in the questions. So basically, it's 20 questions, and each question takes you a few seconds to read and give an answer to. And you're supposed to reflect in the last week of your life as you answer those questions. So once you take the questionnaire, you're given a score, and your score is a ratio. It's like a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio. 1-to-1 means you have equal parts negativity and positivity. Interestingly enough, in most of my focus groups, the majority of the participants actually had more negativity than positivity. The scale, the answer to the questionnaire for the patient or the recipient doesn't go below a 1-to-1. 1-to-1's as low as it goes. But a lot of people I found were like 1-to-3. They had like 3 times the negativity they did the positivity. So anyway, that's our baseline, right? We created a baseline to recognize how negative and how positive each person is. I then had them start a gratitude practice. And similar to what I just explained a moment ago, I gave everyone the option, and this is, again, built into Take 2 Minutes, especially for a clinician. You can look at everyone who's part of a group and see who's doing what activities. So I was able to look and make sure everyone in the focus group was either doing gratitude journaling or a gratitude challenge. You had to do one or the other. And once they did those for about 12 to 14 days, I then assigned them another activity, which is a 3 good things activity. And 3 good things is a hugely impactful activity. And it's kind of what you talked about with your children at the dinner table. So the 3 good things activity is ideally reflecting on the past day of 3 good things that happened to you. It's almost like 3 gratitude statements, right? So in my case studies, I've asked people to do a gratitude practice in the morning. So within a couple hours of waking up, write a gratitude statement. And then after 14, 15 days of doing that, for the next 14, 15 days, keep doing the gratitude in the morning, but also do 3 good things in the evening. So take a few minutes for gratitude in the morning, take a few minutes for 3 good things in the evening. And that's all they did. At day 35, everyone had to take a second MDS questionnaire. I then took the scores from the first MDS questionnaire and compared them to the scores of the second MDS questionnaire. And this is where I can say that 95% of all participants who actually do those 2 activities for the duration that was asked have a 200% increase on average in positivity after just 35 days.
So they feel better. They're feeling more positive, less negative. When
Yes.
someone says a gratitude statement and they're like, okay, I am grateful for my cat. There's variations of what they might even write, just I'm grateful for the sun shining today. When you say gratitude statement, you kind of gave an example earlier, but kind of unpack that. So someone goes, okay, I want to try this. What's a gratitude statement exactly?
Yeah, and I think the examples you gave, I would say, are kind of shallow. It's one of those things where ideally you want to make it a little bit more impactful, but it's okay to start with the shallow. And this is where, again, the gratitude challenge helps you because the gratitude challenge gives you something to think about and for you to write a statement for. But what I tell people is, yeah, I'm grateful for my dogs too. I absolutely love my dogs. But as you get better with a gratitude practice, the idea is you're recognizing gratitude at various points throughout the day. You're not making just one effort to think of one quick statement just in the morning. That's kind of a starting point. Ideally, as you understand positive psychology and get into a more positive mindset, you're walking on an errand. Let's say you're like exercise. Let's say you're going out for an errand and you're walking from your parking lot to the store or something like that. And I've noticed at times like, oh, I smell flowers. I like the smell of flowers. And so it's recognizing those things in your daily activity. So you should get to that point through gratitude journaling. If you start with, I'm grateful for my cat, I'm grateful for my son, I'm grateful for my dog, again, that's a good starting point. But you sometimes, what I tell people is try to put a little more into it. Instead of I'm grateful for my son or my kids, my children, I'm grateful for time spent with my children because it creates a better bond with them. Or I'm grateful specifically for when I get to exercise with my kids because they have time in the morning to spend with me. So I'm putting a little bit more into it. And that makes it, in my mind, a little bit more impactful of a statement. And getting to that point, I think, is the key. But I don't think a lot of people will start at that. I think a lot of people can start with the easier statements and just stick with it. I think what I tell people is if you have those easy statements, I'm grateful for my cat, that's great. Start with that. But tomorrow, you have to think of something different. You can't be grateful for your cat again. You have to be grateful for something else. And the next day has got to be something else. You have to have at least about 10 to 14 days of different things you're grateful for to challenge yourself to make it a little bit more impactful.
Okay. So I'm going to challenge the listeners right now. I want to add, I am grateful for, let's say I'm going to use my dogs. I have dogs. I am grateful for my dogs because they love me unconditionally and greet me at the door when I come home. Add a because is kind of what I'm hearing you say. Add a because. I am grateful for my dogs because. And then why are you grateful for them? Like add that because in there and challenge yourself to write 3 in the morning and see how that goes. Challenge the because part. Is that what you're saying? Like that's a statement because that's what I think is deeper than just I'm grateful for my dogs.
Yep. That's great.
Okay. And then totally if you want to do this with your family and your kids, you're going to integrate the because. I am grateful for my dogs because they play with me and I enjoy playing with them and they make me feel better. Something. So practicing that with your family can help them then have a deeper relationship with gratitude rather than the surface, to your point, the surface relationship with gratitude. Then it will become more integrated in to their daily life. Is that where we're going? I mean, just to get 100%. Practical. So if someone's listening, I want you to walk away with, because there's one thing when you listen to a podcast and you're like, okay, but what's my takeaway? What could I implement today that could be life-changing? And this is the one thing, if you're going to walk away from this podcast, that could be for you, for your relationships, for your family. What is the research on sharing gratitude with another person? Let's say I want to text my husband, I love you because you light up the room when you walk in just by your presence and your smile. What's the research on sharing that deeper gratitude with the people you love and care about?
Before we get to that, I also want to add, because I thought your explanation was beautiful. I think that's great to add the because statement. I think earlier in our conversation, you mentioned also, I can't remember how you worded it, but it was something along the lines of what I said around there's different emotions. You're going to have other things happen in life. I think the gratitude statements in the form of 3 good things, again, talking about 3 good things that happened to you in the day is great at the end of the day because, again, not every day is a great day. There are challenges. And I think that is the beauty of the 3 good things. If you can end your day somewhere, let's say 90 minutes before you go to bed with reflecting on 3 good things that happened in that day, even on the challenging days, if something bad happened to you, you had a problem at work, you had conflict, you had an argument with your spouse or loved one, whatever it may be, if you can take a moment and reflect on 3 good things, that is so huge because it puts your mind into a positive state. Again, it doesn't mean you have to quash those emotions you're having or forget about those emotions. It just helps you recognize other things you're grateful for and maybe process the problem a little better because you can still reflect on the positivity. Not saying you need to write down or think of those 3 good things and also you'd be like, oh, everything's great now. That's not the goal. The goal is just to recognize the positives to help you combat the problem, conflict, whatever it may be. Doesn't mean it has to go away. Doesn't mean you have to forget about it. It's just giving yourself a different perspective on life besides just the problem you're having. And I wanted to state that real quickly. So to your question on sharing, I think sharing is always a great thing. How much is going to help the recipient? I don't know if I actually know the answer to that. You may have some more knowledge on that than I do. I think for the giver, the person who's sharing the gratitude, I think it really, again, helps them with their whole concept of positive psychology, because there's a whole exercise I learned about from the psychologist, which is called a thank you letter. And the idea behind a thank you letter is writing a thank you letter to someone, and you don't have to even give it to them. You literally just write the letter for your own benefit of something someone did that you're grateful for, and write a paragraph or two, and you can then choose to give it to them or keep it. But that whole activity of recognizing gratitude because of someone else is still huge in the field of positive psychology.
I love that. Thank you for sharing about the thank you letter. I think seem like they're simple, but they're not. They're deep and they can be transformative. And so maybe another integration of this is think of one person or something, a thank you that you want to write. Like you said, you don't have to give it to them, and just notice how you feel after it. Like kind of take a moment, notice how you feel. I think we're so busy and we're hurrying through things that we don't notice the impact that a gratitude practice, good things that happen at the end of your day. How do you feel after you do these practices? Notice, take an inventory of how does your body feel? How do you feel emotionally? And you might not be like, oh, I'm all good. And you might notice a subtle shift. You might notice a little bit lighter. Just kind of notice what that feels like to you, because that's part of this practice, I would imagine, is noticing how you feel. Is that part of it?
That's a big part of it. And also another huge part is neuroplasty. So the idea of positive psychology is it's creating new neural pathways in your mind, especially three good things. That's why three good things is so huge. As I've mentioned, you're going to do three good things, ideally 90 minutes before you go to bed. So reflecting on the day, thinking of three good things that happened to you in the day, even during a bad day. What happens when you go to sleep then is your subconscious works on that positivity you just created in your mind. Again, you could have had a bad day. You could be a little bit angry, but the idea behind the three good things end of the day is it gives you some positivity at the end of the day. You go to sleep, your subconscious actually works on that positivity to create new neural pathways in your head. And then when you wake up, you have these new neural pathways that are created. And of course, it takes them a while to form. It doesn't happen one day. You're not going to, do three good things on a Monday night, and Tuesday morning, your life's all rainbows and butterflies, as I said earlier. The idea behind it is you're creating new neural pathways in your head so that you can more easily recognize good things in your life. And with anything, it takes time. And the interesting thing about it takes time is the doctor who I spoke with at Duke University, he had some pretty hard data showing that three good things is an activity that only takes 15 days, meaning that he had, through his 28,000 participants, he had people who did it for 30 days. He had people who did it for 40 days. He had people who did it for 10 days. He found that sweet spot to be 15 days. It only takes 15 days of reflecting on the day, writing down three good things for people to have a impactful change in their mental well-being for 4 months thereafter, meaning that the positive effects last 4 months thereafter because of the neural pathways you've created during those exercises.
That's pretty powerful for people just to take that in. 15 days of doing three good things. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. If someone says, well, I don't know, if I'm so depressed, I can't even see something good, what would be some examples? Maybe they feel really blocked and they're like, I don't know how to even access three good things.
Right. So this is where, to your earlier example, you got to start small. My dog showed some attention and wagged his tail, made me happier for a moment. That's a small one, but that could be a good thing that you witnessed that day. And if you don't have animals, I went outside and there was a cool breeze. It felt good. Something small. It doesn't have to be prolific on the onset, but the goal is to recognize three good things that either happened to you, you did. It could be even something you saw, and it could be something like, I went to the store and held the door for a lady who walked through and she said, thank you. That's a good thing, right? If you do that, if you're a little depressed, you can still recognize you did it and someone said thank you to you. And that was a good thing for you. That's one of your good things for the day. And then what'll happen is, the third, fourth day, you may try to hold the door. So that night, you have another good thing you can act upon. makes you start building on it and trying to do things so you have things to write about, which will in turn increase your mental state, improve your mental state.
So I want to give an example because let's just play with this. Okay. So I'm
Sure.
walking, we have eagles around our house, which is so amazing. So if I'm in like, okay, I just kind of need to reset myself, I'll go and I'll look for the eagles. I may or may not see them, but it gives me something to like know that I'm excited about. Does this start transferring into let me look for good? I'm just using the eagles as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, it totally does. And I think that's what I would say is days, let's say 5 through 10, 5 through 12, maybe, is you start looking for the good things. And then after day about 12 or 14, roughly, they just start appearing to you. What I'd say stages, if you're in a depressed state or unhappy or trying to turn your life around, days 1 through 5 are going to be a struggle. You got to really find things that are positive. You got to spend a little bit of time to really think about the day and try to pull up a few positive things. Day 5 through 12, let's say, maybe you do start trying to notice things, being proactive, let's call it, right? Because you want to have those things into the day. So you start looking for them. Days 12 on is when it almost just starts becoming a little more natural to you.
Okay, you kind of see it. Your veil, the blocks of starting to lift on
Yeah.
there's nothing good and it's all bad. Okay, there's a little glimmer. I'm starting to see little glimmers. The other piece of this that comes up for me is we have an energy we bring into rooms. I love
Yeah.
Jill Bolte Taylor's work where she's like, you are responsible for the energy you bring into a room or a space or with other people. It's so powerful to me. In her book, My Stroke of Insight, is such a great book. If anybody hasn't read that, this to me feels like even your energy over this podcast. I can feel it and I can feel your energy and it's genuine and authentic. A lot of people put on a mask and they put on
Right.
a smile and they don't really feel it inside. They've done that since they were young. I'm just going to put a smile on and everything's great. How does this change your energy? I think the energy you feel inside primarily, because that's what transposes to the outside, an authentic, genuine, I feel this shift in my energy I'm bringing. Does this make sense?
It totally does. And I have a few answers for this. I'm going to start with something I don't talk about as much. I don't usually talk about myself and my ability to change others. I find that an awkward conversation for me, maybe, because I don't want to say I have the ability to change others. But since you brought up this topic, about the same time my son was struggling with depression, it was interesting, let's say 3 or 4 months time for me, because one thing was my son was struggling with depression in high school, but something else that happened, I don't talk about as much, is I had about 3 different incidents where there's a local stores in my little town that I frequent. And I had 3 different times where someone at a store said, when you come into our store, you leave. And after you leave, we all of us talk about how we are all in a much better mood for the next hour. They actually said to me, you actually bring like a positive aura with you and it affects the whole store for an hour or so afterwards. And I really reflected on those at that point in time. I was like, wow, I have the ability to affect other people just by being happy, being courteous, being kind, being positive. And it is probably a little bit of a false positivity because there are days where, again, I don't necessarily feel it, right? But when I go out and I'm around other people, I still try to put on a happy face. I still try to be kind to others. I still try to show compassion for others. I still try to be respectful of others. If people are in a store, I'm going to say hi to them, ask them how their day's doing, even if I'm not having a great day myself. And I guess what I recognized is those little efforts made a difference on other people's lives, enough of a difference where they made mention of it to me.
I think the energy we're bringing to our environments, even on the phone, I had this situation happen similar to you where I was making a reservation for Mother's Day for us. We had 12 people, 12 or 14, I can't remember. And I just was being kind. I said, appreciative. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. She was very kind on the phone. I appreciated her. We went to the restaurant and I didn't think anything of it. And she came up to me and she goes, I just had to find you. Your phone call made such a difference. And I'm like, what phone call? She's like, when you made the reservation, I had to come meet you. I've never
Right.
had that happen. I mean, that was just a phone call. That tender, genuine, authentic, not a front. It's authentic care for other human beings. And
Yeah.
just the fact that I cared about the other human being on the other end of the phone, it brings me to like, I genuinely did. That's the difference. You genuinely care when you're walking into the store about each person in that store. I genuinely care for other human beings. I think that's what these practices can start doing.
It can. And I think what I was going to also add is I always want to touch on the false or fake positivity. And what I have found is as I've gotten better at positive psychology, as I've become a more positive person, again, we're going to have negative days. We're going to have days that it's just we're not vibing, something's wrong, something bad happened. Work's a challenge for everyone. I mean, I try to be as happy as I can, but there's always going to be challenges in your professional career. What I found is on those days when I'm struggling, I probably have less interactions with people purposefully because I don't want to have a negative interaction because of how I'm feeling. I prefer to almost like avoid people to some degree instead of inducing my negativity upon them when I'm having those days. And again, this is where positive psychology helps because I can recognize it's happening. I have a really good friend. I'm going to mention his name. His name is Paul. So, hi, Paul, if you listen to this, he listens to a lot of my podcasts. Great friend of mine. I love Paul. He and I are someone who, when we are having off days, we talk to each other and we're able to kind of a shoulder to complain on about our negativity. And that's one person I go to quite often when we're having a bad day. And he and I are good with helping each other recognize, hey, this is a bad moment. You'll be over this in a day or two type thing. And so sometimes having that resource can be a huge help for someone. If you have one person you trust, one person you love, one person, ideally it should be your spouse quite often too. I'm not saying I don't go to my spouse as well, but Paul and I have known each other for 30 years. So he's someone who I just go to and he comes to me with work related struggles and it helps us get through it so that we're not trying to have all that negativity build up like on our coworkers, our peers. We're not infecting them with our bad times, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're processing it with a trusted friend, a trusted
Yes.
person. It could be a therapist, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a partner, it could be
yes,
processing it. So then you're able to release it and you're not projecting it as the term, clinical term. And I know people are like, what? But you're not putting it on, hot potatoing it accidentally to your kids or your spouse or your friends or your coworkers. And I think there's something to be said because you're taking responsibility for tending to, nurturing, taking care of those things that are real in life. Like we're going to have pain. We're going to have heartache and heartbreak. And we're going to have hard times and challenges. And those trusted people help along with these practices, I think are so helpful because that's what we want to do. We're wanting to change patterns, change these themes where we feel stuck, we feel powerless, we can't feel any better. Those are the things that help you start to turn the corner on those days as a trusted person. These practice writing 3 good things that happen, your gratitude practice. Right. Let's talk real quick. And I know we're almost out of time on journaling real fast. How important is journaling to someone's healing process?
Well, I think journaling is a part of the gratitude journaling process. And you look at anyone who's a really successful person who has success through positivity, everyone I've ever met has a gratitude journaling practice in the morning. It's astonishing to me how many people I've met who are, in my mind, happy people who are successful in their career. And success is measured on many different terms. In my mind, success doesn't just mean they're making money. Success could be your position in the company, how much you enjoy your job. Your enjoyment of the job as a measurement of success. So when I say success, it can mean one of many things in your company, but ultimately, all those people I've met seem to have a gratitude journaling practice they do every morning. So I think it's very, very impactful for people to try it and stick with it. And if you're not good at gratitude journaling, again, try the gratitude challenge. And, I want to mention one more thing on this exact topic. I think you and I, in your profession, what I do, and many others have a similar goal, and that's to help people find ways to improve their life. And the beauty in my mind of it is that to take 2 minutes, obviously I love Take 2 Minutes. I've created Take 2 Minutes, but Take 2 Minutes is not a one-stop shop for everyone. And that's the beauty. There are therapists people can go to. And because you mentioned, and I completely overlooked that when I said finding someone you can talk to, a therapist is a perfect person to talk to about your troubles. But the goal is you have therapists. There's all kinds of services out there these days. There's thousands of apps to compete with Take 2 Minutes. There is meditations, which also is offered in Take 2 Minutes. And there's other apps of meditations. Try things because there are so many things out there to try that there will be something you like. And even with gratitude journaling, there are different apps. You might not like 10 of the apps, but don't give up if you want to try it. Try Take 2 Minutes. If you don't like try Take 2 Minutes, try another one. Keep trying things. And the same thing happens for meditations. Kristen, you probably know there's so many different ways to meditate. I've had so many people try meditation and go, yeah, I tried it a couple of times. I didn't like it. Don't give up. There are many different methodologies of meditations. There's guided meditations, story-based meditations, breathing exercises. There's different ways to meditate. Try it until you find one that you vibe with, that you gel with, that you like, and then you're making progress at that point in time. I hate to say it, if you have a therapist you don't like, try a different therapist. And that, not to lose business to you, but the goal is you have to try things. You have to give it some effort because you're going to find something that works for you if you keep trying.
100%. And when it does click and you do like the app or the therapist, or you're hitting a home run. I mean,
Yeah.
The therapeutic relationship is important. Having a
Yes.
relationship or exercise that you like. Let's say you're like, oh, I hate running, but I love going on walks with my dog. Beautiful. Do that then. Just do that. Do more of that. Like you don't have to do, we're sold so many things. Do what
Yes.
resonates for you and your body. Do what you like. Do what works for you. So if someone's like, I kind of would like to try Take 2 Minutes, where do they find it? How do they sign up? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'll touch on Take 2 Minutes a little bit more. Take 2 Minutes was purposely built to be a texting app. Obviously, it started by texting my son. Once I started making an actual set of activities and more of an application, I did a lot of research because I was like, do I make this a mobile app that you get on the App Store? And the answer became no to me. And the reason why is a big part of Take 2 Minutes is communicating with the user. So if someone signs up for Take 2 Minutes, in theory, they're looking for help. In theory, they're trying to improve their mental well-being. What I learned through apps by listening to podcasts where the competitors were on is that if you have an app, most of the time they can't reach their subscribers, meaning someone downloads the app, puts it on their phone, but then the messages that are sent from that app are ignored. And through the data, I've learned that an app notification only has about a 24% read rate, whereas a text message has a 92% read rate within 3 minutes. So Take 2 Minutes is a texting platform. There's an app behind it. You can go to the website, take2minutes.org. You can do 95% of all the activities on the website. The website is what's called a progressive web app, meaning it's meant to be ran on your phone. It will work on a computer just fine, though, but it's 100% developed for your phone as a web app. So if you go to take2minutes.org on your phone, it's going to size perfectly for your phone. All the activities are developed for your phone. However, you can do everything through texting also, which is quite phenomenal. So let's say you are out and about one day and you're having a bit of stress and you want to help calm down. You can text back to our phone number, I'd like a 2-minute meditation. It's going to send you a link to a 2-minute meditation. You can get specific and go, I want a 2-minute meditation spoken by a female. You can say, I want a 5-minute meditational story. You're going to get a 5-minute meditational story. You can say, I would like a breathing exercise. You're going to get a breathing exercise. And there's just, it recognizes, it's a full built-in chat bot that I've developed. It recognizes at this point in time, well over, probably 10s, 20, 30,000 different statements you can make. And whatever you say, it tries to parse it apart and give you back what you need or what you're asking for. If you're doing gratitude journaling, you can literally write a gratitude statement via text. So you can pull your phone out, start a text message to our service and say, I'm grateful for my dog because it has unconditional love for me and it licks me and shows happiness. And it's going to put that right into your gratitude journal. You can then later on ask for a link to your journal. It's going to send you a link where you can read your past entries. So it's all text-based if you want it to be, but it also has a fully robust built-in progressive web app at take2minutes.org.
Awesome. We will put that link in the show notes too. Thank you so much, Marc, for your heart, your spirit, your wisdom, creating this app. And I see your intention behind it, which is really my intention, is to help people find healing, inner peace, and deep connections with themselves and with others. So thank you so much for the work you're doing and being on the Close the Chapter podcast.
Similarly, thank you for all you do to help people as well. It's important for individuals like yourself to be there for people. I think we just need to get more people to try things. And so thank you as well, Kristen.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.